What's up guys, welcome back to McLaren Media and welcome back to another Lightroom tutorial. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how I edited this photo into this photo. So let's begin. So guys, if you've been following along with the channel for the last 5 or 6 months, you'll know that I've been actually working really hard on my 350Z to sort of fix it up and get it back on the road. And yesterday, it passed its MOT with flying colours, and that's not bad for a 23-year-old car with 120,000 miles on the clock, no advisories, nothing. So I'm really happy about that. And as a celebratory sort of gift to myself for doing that, I decided to take it out for a drive last night and do a photo shoot with it, like a mini photo shoot. So I took this photo, and today we're going to be editing that photo. Right guys, so we're in Lightroom, as always, and this photo here, I took on my Canon with my brand new lens, 17-35mm. It's a really nice lens. I didn't use a tripod or anything like that, and as you can see it's a little bit grainy, but it's perfectly acceptable as a photograph. First thing I'm going to do, as always, scroll right down to the bottom, and we're going to remove the chromatic aberration, and we're going to enable a lens correction. So we change the profile, because obviously mine never picks it up, to Canon RF 16mm. That's not correct. I did have a look at this earlier. I don't think it knows quite what lens mine is, because it doesn't seem to appear. There's a lot to choose from. 16-35mm is probably going to be the closest, so we're going to give it all that. And as you see, that completely changes the profile of it. The lens distortion, going to sort of bring that back up. And the vignetting, I'm going to make it darker because it's a dark image. Right then, we'll scroll up a little bit, and the first thing I'm going to start to do is the colour balance, or like the white balance. This is quite clearly like sort of tungsten light because of that blue of the street lamp. Obviously it's quite clearly blue. We will then scroll right back up to the top, and we're just going to do a little bit of editorial to the overall picture. So I'm going to start a little bit of exposure, bit of the contrast. Again guys, this is always sort of, when editing photos, it's always what you prefer. Like if you want to edit it in a certain way, then you do that. Myself, obviously, being a professional, I sort of can do it by eye these days. I sort of know what kind of vibe I want to go for at the end. So a little bit of correction there. I'm going to come down a little bit more. I'm going to play a little bit around with the colour, not too much though. So I'm going to pull some of the saturation out. Now the beauty of this car being grey is the fact that you can pull a lot of the colour out, and the colour you only really need to worry about if you zoom in is the tail lights and the number plate, and also potentially the sign around here, but I'm not going to worry too much about that at the moment. The car, weirdly in this light, you can see it's kind of picking up like a weird like greeny colour, like a greeny hue. So I'm going to sort of bring some of the yellows and greens down a bit. That's probably because of light reflection around. Cars are very reflective at night, if you've never noticed. Pull a bit of the aqua out as well, and you can see that it brings back the grey of the 350Z. That's probably all I'm going to do with that for the time being. Come down a little bit further. I'm just going to add a little bit of texture in, tiny bit of clarity. Nothing too major. Maybe I could play around with the noise reduction here. Little bit on the slider there. You see that the car obviously starts to smooth out. I don't like to use the AI noise reduction. I find it just takes too long. It's good if you really want to edit a photo very clearly, but I find it just takes a bit too long for my workflow. So I like to still use the manual noise reduction, which is perfectly acceptable if you've got a high enough megapixel camera. So scroll back up to the top, and then we're going to come down to the little circular with the bevelly icon, I don't know what you call that, the masking area, and then we're going to use the subject, and it should select the 350Z hopefully once it's done that. I'm just trying to find it, and there we go. So it has picked up a little bit of the building, but I'm not too worried about that because I'm not going to do an horrendous amount of editorial to this. So just going to boost the exposure just a tiny bit. Work with the contrast, see what sort of does when you play around with the contrast a bit. Sort of the highlights. I'm going to pull the highlights down quite a bit because obviously what you'll find is you bring the highlights up, you get these horrible white areas there. Like you bring the highlights down, you can start to see the detail come back in the tail lights. The shadow areas of the vehicle I'm going to bring up quite a bit. The whites, I mean, the whites is going to expose the car a bit more. Obviously, you know how lighting works outside at night. And then the blacks will just boost up a tiny bit. Annoyingly, with the way this light on, obviously my spoiler on the boot has actually cast quite a nasty shadow here, but I'm not too worried about that. I think the overall subject of the car is like down this way. So if we scroll down, I'm going to play around with the colour just a tiny bit, just add a little bit more blue in, pull some of the saturation back out of it, like I said, helps to accentuate the grey. And we'll come down to the texture palette, bit of clarity in there. As you can start to see, as soon as you do that, it does start to make the car pop. Bit of noise reduction again, just to help smooth it out and help make that paintwork look a bit more clean. I mean, the car has been detailed and washed before the shoot, but it helps just a bit more. That's pretty much there. I mean, if you want to play around with the dehazing a little bit, like it's all personal preference, this, guys. Like, you can edit your photos however you want. I've also got no judgment of that sort of thing. This is just how I do it, and if you want to sort of learn Lightroom, I find, like I've said before, the best way is just learn by doing. So another mask we're going to make, we're going to go to the big blue plus icon at the top, and we're going to play around with the background. So like I've done with a lot of my photos in the past, this is where you can really help accentuate the vehicle. So I'm going to pull the exposure right down, and you can see that really starts to make the car pop out. Pull the contrast up a little bit, suck some of the highlights out of it. Shadows, it's all personal preference. In a photo like this, you want to sort of play around until you got like a decent image. And guys, if you ever want to refer back to your master image, you can hit the / key, but also I find easy this little like it's empty rectangle and full rectangle tool, I call it. Click that and it shows you the original image, and you can see just how horrible that actually looks compared to what we were editing with. So yeah, if you just want to see how the progress you're coming along with, hit that tool there. We scroll down a bit further. Gonna put a bit more temperature blue in this, suck some of the colour out of it, and then this is where you could sort of add your clarity and texture. Now I obviously like to suck the texture out of this because it gives you this sort of like almost a fake depth of field. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much all there. So the next thing I do, like I always do, we're going to add a linear gradient. Drag from the bottom up, scroll up to the top, and pull the exposure out. And what I find that does, that just helps put some, like, you know, it helps draw the eye to the vehicle. Now, other things you can do here, like I've done before in other photos, and like you've probably seen on this channel already, another linear gradient you could pull from the top onto the vehicle, completely over the car, and just like increase the exposure. This sort of fakes how much light that light is actually putting on the vehicle. As you can see, like it sort of, it helps. It does help. And then potentially if you wanted to, you could take one from the back, get a bit more exposure going in there, possibly just sort of move that around a little bit. It's coming along nicely, this photo. I'm liking how this looks. The last thing I'm going to do is use the brush tool. And I'm just going to just paint over the wheels a minute with that red, and you'll see the red appear there. I'm just going to pull some more exposure into the wheels. You see what I'm doing there? And then make sure you create another brush tool if you want to do two separate wheels, otherwise you'll get the same effect. And the lighting might be ever so slightly different between the axles. Yeah, so that really has helped that photo pop. Just gonna ever so slightly paint a tiny bit more on that side. Yeah, so that is that photo done. And I think it looks sick. And remember, if we press this tool down here, or the backslash key, that's what we started with. That's what we're ending with. And if I zoom in, you can see just how much more accented everything on this vehicle is. Yeah, I'm really happy with that photo. Very cool photo. Obviously, like I've always said, if you go into now Photoshop and that, you can remove this sign. You could remove this like UFO looking thing that appears to have appeared in the dark sky at the back there. All the other signs, you know, you can go around and take the imperfections out, potentially like that mirrored on the side of the car. Whatever you want to do, that's up to you. But as in Lightroom, that photo is now edited. It looks really cool. So guys, that brings me to the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed watching me do this Lightroom tutorial. We've turned this photo into this photo, and I think it looks absolutely sick. Guys, if you want to see the all the photos I've taken from this shoot, then head over to my Instagram channel. It is McLaren_media. That is McLaren_media on Instagram, and you'll better see all the photos from this shoot that I've taken. I'll probably about 3 of them up. And always, like, don't forget to like the channel. Don't forget to comment if you are doing sort of photography like this yourself, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. And always leave me a comment if there's something particularly you want me to cover, because I can do Lightroom, Photoshop, all those editorial things. If there's something you particularly want to learn, then let me know. But as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to making more for you, and I'll see you in the future. Take care.